What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're taking a look at a clip from The Line. If you would like to, please go down below to the description and find a link to The Line and to the live stream that this video clip is coming from. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to The Line. I host over on The Line at least twice a month, so I hope to see you over there. All right, let's get on into the clip. If you're ready to fuck around and find out what this crazy ass caller's talking about today, then please stay tuned.
We got Tony, pronouns he, him, calling in from vigorous assault. Just attacking, going crazy. That's what Tony's doing. He's here to be violent against us. Who is deconstructing and wants to know if there is room for logical, science-based epistemology for the possibility of anything supernatural. Tony, you're on the line with Forrest and John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for asking. Man, you guys were just dicks to Billy there. That was just awful.
It's so mean. We're so mean. God.
I'm sorry.
It's
amazing
what are we going to do? Watch the show.
When are you guys going to start the Triple X After Hours edition where Matt Dillahunty can come show everybody what a real dick looks like? Is that going to happen?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we can all emulate him forever because that's what we do here on the show.
Fives and fives of people would tune in to see that, I think. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so I'm kind of on the backside of deconstructing. I grew up in the church, and I actually worked in ministry for a while as a youth pastor. And like science has always just made sense to me. Like my grandfather, he was a biologist for the federal government. And like when I was a kid, I thought he knew everything because there was never a question I could ask that he didn't have the answer to. And like I was that kid growing up in Sunday school that would like actually the teacher or the pastor or something when they would say something scientifically inaccurate, I'd be like, actually no, that's I can't think of an instance, but it's always been something that stood out to me. And as when I say I'm on the backside of deconstructing, I'm kind of reconstructing to determine what I actually believe about the nature of life and the universe and existence and all that kind of stuff, because there are certain things they've just been ingrained into me for such a long time that I don't know whether I believe them or if it just simply was a part of me from such a young age that I can't differentiate, you know? So I've been kicking around these ideas, and I'm not ready to go out on the branch of calling myself an atheist. I'm not sure if the thing, the entity, the consciousness, if there is such a thing, I don't know that I would consider it a god, but there are so many different elements of the supernatural that show up across cultures and religions and beliefs, and across, you know, from the dawn of time, we've had stories of ghosts and, you know, disembodied spirits and spooky things in the woods and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering, you know, if the essence of science and scientific research and discovery is to attain a greater understanding of all things natural, what if science is the wrong tool to study the supernatural? It's sort of like looking for a block of wood with a metal detector. Like, it's just the wrong tool. You're not going to get there. You know what I mean? So this is kind of where I'm at. I've got a lot of thoughts. I don't quite have them all organized into any meaningful sense. And actually, John, I think it may have been an episode I watched with you on it a while back where you discussed this idea of some entity attaining a level of transcendence and then retroactively kind of writing itself into the creation of the universe. Does that sound familiar to you?
It doesn't sound like anything that I would have said. So
you weren't presenting it as like something you believed, but it was just a conceptual idea that somebody on the show mentioned. I'm trying to remember what the hell the term was, and I can't, and it's bugging the hell out of me. But whatever. I have said a lot. What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here that I think are really important. Number one is that you're talking about like these ubiquitous concepts across, you know, cultures all around the world about like ghosts and the supernatural realm and all these things. And like that like is generally, as far as I know, I'm not a cultural anthropologist, but like as far as I understand from my little bit of training in there, is that like is kind of just a natural occurrence that you have intelligent people seeing that this person goes to sleep every night and they wake back up. And then one time they went to sleep and they didn't wake back up. And so there must be something there that's driving them that goes away. When I kill this deer, it doesn't get back up. So there must be something more going on. And this concept of like a spirit realm or an afterlife is strongly, reinforced by the same things that we get from people today, where they're like, well, I feel my parent that died a little while. I had a dream about them. I could have sworn I heard their voice or whatever, you know what I mean? All these things that are totally normal psychological occurrences, that just, you know, when you don't know any better, can kind of take charge of you. I've been around a lot of cadavers in my life, and I can tell you, even now, like you see a dead person, and like sometimes you fucking swear they're moving. Like it's just like it takes a little while to get used to the concept that this person isn't getting up. And so like for early humans who don't have any concept of what a logical fallacy is or how to avoid, you know, bad thinking, or so to speak, it would make sense that they would come to these conclusions and lean into these very human behaviors, and believe that there's more to them than there really is. And that sounds a little bit like hand waving away until you compare it to other things that are ubiquitous across cultures, like, you know, the monsters that people believe in. Were there really cyclopses, or did more than one population find an elephant skull and be like, oh shit, this thing has a big hole in the middle of it, that must be a big eyeball, you know? And so cultures around the world have dragons and flying monsters and all these other things that, like, certainly, you know, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about possible validity of if it weren't as culturally accepted as religion is. So, well, at the end of the day, you're describing behavior. Yeah, please.
No, I was just going to say, because I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that specifically. I was mentioning the ubiquity of those concepts just to kind of point out the fact that, like, things of the supernatural seem to be everywhere. You know what I mean? Like they crop up in cultures and so forth. Not that I necessarily put a lot of stock in them as evidence, but just sort of like, you know, if there's enough people who claim to have the same experience or seen the same thing and they've never communicated with one another. I mean, I guess it goes into some like deal with the aliens stuff, but I mean, maybe there are aliens, I don't know. But, you know, enough people have similar experiences. It's sort of like, okay, maybe we need to look into this. But I was just thinking more on a bigger picture kind of thing. Like if the entire essence of the supernatural is something that can't be measured with scientific, tangible methodologies, what if, like, is there room within your understanding and your epistemology to explore those avenues?
Sure. So, you know, it's really important to remember with, like, when we talk about this kind of thing, we're talking about agnosticism, which, you know, just to give the general concept to everybody is, you know, atheism is whether or not you believe a God exists. Gnosticism is whether or not you know. And so you can be an agnostic atheist or an agnostic theist. I do believe in a God, but I don't know for sure, or, you know, whatever.
Right.
And so what we're talking about here is, you know, you use the word epistemology, which is great. How do we know what we know? Are we willing to actually say we know a thing? And when are we willing to say that we actually know a thing? And in order to get there is, if we don't have the tools to study this and we don't have a way to say whether or not this thing, then why would we go about believing it? Unless we find a tool to study. We used to not know, you know, that what pick your favorite, man. Like, we used to not know what Pluto was, you know, and then we developed the tools to find it. Even though Pluto was there the whole time, nobody should have believed in Pluto before we saw it until we had evidence of it, because there's no reason to, because you didn't have any actual evidence. So same thing with germ theory, you know, Leeuwenhoek, you know, developing a simple microscope and checking the plaque on his teeth and seeing microorganisms and stuff. before that time, if somebody came along, Ignaz Semmelweis or whoever, and says, listen, y'all, there's these tiny little microscopic things crawling around your hands and they can get you sick. That was true. No one should have believed it until there was a good reason to. So yeah, maybe there's this God, maybe there's these ghosts, maybe there's all these things. And maybe, like you said, we're looking for wood with a metal detector and we just don't have a way to find it. If it's true, then we need to find a better way to find it. And so far, we have done everything we know how to do, everything that has ever worked to give us any sort of insight into what the natural world really is. And we haven't found a single thing, like not even close. So even if it's true, there's no reason to think it is what I'm coming from.
Well, I don't know if you ever read, there's this short story that was making the rounds on social media ages ago called The Egg. And the essence of it is the person in the story, they die and in the afterlife. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah. And the universe is one big egg for the next thing.
Right. And so, like, this whole thing, the whole purpose of this is to prepare us for something bigger, something transcendent, something whatever. And, like, even if we are exhausting all of our scientific methodologies for looking for those things, is there ever a point that we should give up looking? Like, is there ever a point where you say, like, I mean, what if the people who discovered or are looking for the cure for cancer, they stop short of just finding it and they're like, well, we're never going to find it, and they throw up their hands and walk away, and we never end up with a cure for cancer, what if there is something out there? And go ahead.
I think the difference is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think the difference is, because I agree, we've been working for the cure for cancer for a long time and we haven't got it yet, but that doesn't mean that we haven't gotten a whole fuck of a lot closer. And what the thing is, as we've gone on this journey of studying with trying to figure out cancer, we have learned what cancer is better. We know our enemy better. We know what makes it work. We know what makes it tick. We know how to. We know what we're missing more and more every day. We can see the outline of the puzzle piece, even if we can't see the whole puzzle. You know what I mean? And like that's so important in terms of the scientific process. Is like, you're right. We shouldn't just give up trying to study something because we haven't made any progress yet. I 100% agree with that. The issue is we haven't even made progress in figuring out what the fuck we're talking about yet, let alone how to start searching for it, let alone what we'd be looking for if we knew. And so, like, you get to this point where it's like, you don't have to say, okay, I know for sure this isn't real, or I just don't, I'm never going to try again. But you can get to a point where, like, this very clearly isn't worth my fucking time. Maybe there is another cause of disease beyond germ theory, right? We don't, and I'm speaking very, very loosely here, because of course, there's other carcinogens like radiation, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying, like, if we talk about, like, just in general, what causes the flu? It's the fucking flu virus. Maybe there's something else that causes the flu. Well, we haven't found it yet, and we don't even know what that would possibly be if it isn't a virus and it isn't a bacteria and it isn't a fungus and it isn't anything like. So we have no model for what it could be. We have no idea what it could look like. We don't know what to use to look for something like that, if such a thing exists in the first place. We don't know what a positive, test would mean or be or look like. So we don't know if we even got the right answer or not. So at a certain point, like, we just kind of have to kind of move on with the best data that we have. And I think, like, there is the risk for sure that you might miss out on something that way. But if that thing really exists, then down the line, we will, by only following what we know is true, we will eventually develop something that can help us peer into new realms, as we did with radio, as we did with telescopes, as we did with infrared, as we did with microscopy, as we did with, in so many ways, we blew our minds because we have discovered a totally new realm of existence that we didn't think was possible, because we developed new technology to see it, given the science that we have. So I'm willing to risk putting off that discovery to make sure that I don't sacrifice every discovery and every bit of science that I know works. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. And I think the thing that kind of keeps me on the hook, so to speak, is just some remnant vestigial piece of the faith that I was raised in, and the notion that, someday I'm going to die. And if I don't figure out what the hell's going to happen after that happens, then I might not end up in a good place or whatever. If there is a place, I don't know. But like, there's just that sort of lingering thing in the back of my mind. I don't necessarily believe in a specific deity. And actually, as I've kind of looked into my personal spiritual beliefs and so forth, I realized I was just reinventing Buddhism at a certain point. But I want to believe that there is more to existence, and maybe the universe is kind of like Deep Thought in the Hitchhiker's Guide series, and this whole thing is just a computer program to discover the meaning of life, and that's why we're here. And that's sort of remnant of Alan Cummings saying that people are what happens when the universe wants to think about itself. And I'm just searching, I'm grasping, I'm reaching. And I mean, do you or John, do either of you personally hold on to any remnant thread of, wanting to believe or suspicion or hunch or notion that there is anything beyond the tangible universe that we can detect?
Well, so for me, I guess when I left religion, I kind of did away with all of that, and the primary reason for that is because that I feel like that makes this life much more valuable. It made me appreciate this life and really want to seek out like a better situation for myself than I was in, because this is the only life that I get. There's nothing after this life or anything like that as far as we can tell, and so that it just made me value my life and want to better my life even more so, because this is the only life that we get. So I guess I don't hold on to any of that, and I feel like holding on to that, at least in my view, I'm not saying that anybody else should feel this way, but in my view, for me personally, it devalues my life to think about some kind of existence outside of this life.
Yeah, I have a similar concept, because like I was raised pagan, and I was taught, about all this sort of magic and ghosts and spirits and all these things. And when I deconstructed from that, when I started tearing that apart, I did have those kind of vestigial remnants for a long time. And it was a lot about death. And it was a lot about what kind of ghost I'm going to be and how, and about like what kind of like spirits are around me. And I kind of held on to that concept of like, well, magic is real. It's just science we don't understand yet. And I actually used the same kind of analogies that you did. I didn't say exactly the same thing, but like the idea of like, looking for wood with a metal detector, it was very much up my alley at one point. And I just found that the more I cared about, I'm not saying you don't, but the more that I cared about whether or not what I believed was actually true and had a good reason to believe it, and was it useful? Did it have any actual utility in the real world? Did it make any sense in the real world? And if not, then like, why do I have a special set of rules for this then? And it became progressively easier and easier and easier to put those beliefs down and be like, you know what? If someday we find out that there actually is some science to therapeutic touch therapy, which if you don't know, it's where you like hold your hands over people and you can like channel energy into them and heal their wounds, which people used to believe in. It was taught. Nurses used to do therapeutic touch stuff where they were like, and then literally there was I forgot the name of the girl, but you can look it up. This like little girl did a science fair project testing therapeutic touch, where she put a trifold up and cut 2 holes in the bottom and put her hands through it and had nurses come out. And she said, put your hand over one of my hands and do your thing, and I'll tell you whether or not I can feel it. And she found she couldn't ever. And it was like the results were no better than chance at any point. And she completely debunked it. And there was this massive news thing about it. And now that's obviously not true. But when I was a kid, I was taught that kind of shit. I was taught about Reiki and therapeutic touch and how to channel energy into people to heal and all this shit. And you know what? Someday, if that's a real thing and I can be a fucking wizard, that sounds rad. I would want to know that. I want that to be true.
You're a
That
wizard,
sounds
Forrest.
awesome, right? I want that to be the case, but it doesn't appear to be so. And so I'm going to devote my time and my energy to studying ways that I absolutely know help people, that are best actually based on evidence-based best practice, and like things that I actually know are real. And I'm going to spend my life trying to get there. And if I figure out one day we invent a new machine and like, holy fuck, if you do this and this and this, you can fucking heal somebody's cancer with your mind, y'all. I'm in it. I want to do it. But until that day, I'm not giving it any thought. I'm not going to waste my time on something that may not be serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't put a lot of stock into the woo woo. What's the word?
Sure.
Alternative medicine type stuff and things like that. You know,
because I don't have a a hell concept to be afraid of, but I have things like that that might help.
And I have looked into those, and I have had friends that have dabbled in those things and were raised in them, same as you were, and stuff like that. And it just didn't jive with my understanding of, you know, how the universe and life and scientific principles function and things like that. I mean, I took them at face value for a minute, and I assessed it as long as was necessary, and then I was like, nah. But I think just from a bigger sense, not necessarily just, you know, like psychics and pseudo powers and whatever else, but just an essence of there being some reason behind all of this. And just in the on the subject of like finding utility, when I came to a point of realizing, and there's a quote that I've heard across atheist YouTube, I don't know who first coined it, but if you require either the promise of paradise or the threat of damnation to be a good person, you're not a good person. You're a bad person on a leash. As I had came to address that, and I realized that anything done altruistically in the name of a religion is ultimately self-serving. It's not charitable. It's not kindness. It's I'm doing this because I think I'm going to get rewarded for doing so. And that blew my mind, and I was like, holy shit! Like every good thing I've ever done for somebody else, I ultimately was doing for myself. And so I just took a huge step back in my appreciation for other people and my valuing of other people. Like I see people in a very vastly different way than I used to, because I see their intrinsic value, regardless of who they are, or what they're doing, and anything like that. And, you know, I'm going to do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because I think I'm going to be rewarded, or if I don't, then I'm going to be punished. And it's just like that, from just a practical standpoint, has benefited me enormously in life, both in my relationships and interactions with other people. And, you know, I that's kind of what's got me on this journey. Like, I feel like that's like the first couple of steps towards something bigger, some higher understanding, and maybe the essence of discovering meaning in life is we're meant to find it through our interactions with other people, you know? And what if the whole point of religion is to grow beyond the need for it? What if religion is our training wheels, and eventually we're meant to shed that and just be able to ride without the threats or the promise? You know what I mean?
As a story, and not the religion story, but the story of religion being the training wheels, and as a concept of like cultural growth, I think those are fine ways to talk about that. So, you know, I think it's a lovely analogy. But at the end of the day, you're hitting the same wall, which is like, okay, what if? And if, then where's the evidence of that? And if no evidence, then why continue pretending like that? Like I said, the idea that people are growing beyond the need for religion and are being better and better to each other and don't need the training wheels anymore, 100%. Love it. Let's do that. But let's do it without saying that this is the way it's supposed to be, because there's no reason to think this is the way it's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there are elements of morality that, I mean, you can argue about. I think there are elements that are objective, and I think just coming down to the notion of like, hey, if you don't like somebody doing that to you, don't do it to other people. I feel like that's objective, even though it's subjective on some level, but it's a universal concept that we can all kind of get behind. Like, we all have a sense of self, and we all have a sense of what we do and don't like having done to us. I mean, I guess that varies to some degree, but yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, it comes back to just this notion of wanting there to be something behind it all, and not necessarily in the sense that I want to have an afterlife and I want to see, I mean, yeah, I would love to see my loved ones again for eternity, but more this feels important, you know?
Yeah. And even that, like I think it's really important to remember, like even that, it's like, what's really, there's this famous clip from Stephen Fry talking about Mormonism. And they're like, you understand, if when you die, like you get to be around all your family, all your relatives, all together for eternity. And he goes, okay, well, what happens if I'm good? And like, so it's just even you're right. Like, the way that I want to be treated, that whole golden rule thing, I promise you, if I treated my wife the way that I want to be treated, she would fucking leave me. She hates that shit. She's not extroverted. She doesn't want to be on camera. She doesn't want to be probed with questions. She doesn't want to, and if I tried to give my wife the kind of things that I want, she would not like it. And so like, there's this idea of this, some people call it like the platinum rule, treat people how they want to be treated, all this kind of thing, And I think it's the same thing with religion. Like there's no promise that religion makes that you're not going to find somebody that's like, hey, maybe not for me, And so paradise is entirely subjective, and good and evil is at the end of the day, I agree there's some objective components to it that I can base on things like human health and well-being. But it's going to be real hard to pin down. And still, at the end of the day, there's no good reason to believe in any of it. And so, like, I'm just going to continue trying to be the best dude I can. And I'm going to continue trying to shake off these training wheels as best I can. And I'm going to continue trying to advance humanity as best I can. And I'm going to die, and everyone's going to forget me. And that's the way that it is for everybody else, too. And that's okay. And it's not there are things that I'd like to change, and a lot of people wouldn't like those things. And so I'm just going to do my best. And that's all I can hope for. And I'm going to try to know what's true. And that's the best I can do. That's all I got for you, Tony. It really is that simple. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, dude, don't apologize. Like, you've given me a lot to chew on. And I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and it's good to actually interact with you on a meaningful level. I've been wanting to call in for a while, but I think you and the other hosts on these shows across the various, related channels and so forth, I think you guys are out there doing a lot of good in the world. And there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of support, and especially with the climate in our country being the way it is right now, we need a whole hell of a lot more than that. I'm going to keep chasing this rabbit trail until I either find the end of it or I run out of steam, I guess. But I don't know. I always found the mysteries of life more interesting. I mean, yeah, science is interesting and fascinating, and it lets you do things. But
bro, if you like the mysteries, let me tell you some good news about science. That's the whole job is figuring out the mysteries. So like, get in here, dude. Start asking questions. You'll take a long time of everybody telling you what we know. You're in for like a solid half a decade at least of everybody telling you what we do know. And then you're going to get to a point where they're going to start telling you what we don't know. And that's where you start doing the really fun stuff.
Yeah, I dig in. I get into it more of a conceptual level. I don't have the brain for math to be a physicist, and I'm too grossed out by wet things to be a biologist. And I don't know, rocks aren't that interesting to me. So I do like outer space and astrophysics and things of that nature. But again, math. I'll chew on it from more of a conceptual level.
I failed Algebra 1, Introductory Basic Algebra, for like fucking a long time. I want to say about 13 years. I took it in sixth grade, and I failed, and I took it in seventh grade, and I failed, and I took it in eighth grade, and I failed, and they put me in remedial algebra in ninth and 10th, and I kept failing. And then in 11th and 12th, it finally just kind of shuffled me along so I could graduate, but I still didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And then I went to college, and I took it like 3 times. And I was at the point where I was in like the what is a number courses, like basic shit, just because they wouldn't let me take anything else. I had to start there. And I was like bored out of my mind, just trying, like, I know what fucking addition is. I don't know what y equal mx plus b is, finally, right before I got my first degree, I had another fucking Algebra 1 class. And I had this lady named Dr. Fisher. She was a PhD in mathematics. And I called her, went to her office hours, and I was like, I want to be a scientist so fucking bad, but I can't do fucking math. And she's like, why? And I was like, I think in processes. I think about what things are. I don't think about formulas. You tell me to plug these numbers in to this formula. I don't know why. And I don't remember the formula and I don't fucking care. And so I keep trying to do it as a process and it doesn't work. And she goes, oh, fuck, here's your answer. And she spent an afternoon with me showing me all the derivations of every fucking formula, like starting from basic scratch.
Yeah.
Yes, starting from scratch. Okay, slope is y2 minus 1, y1 over x2 minus x1. Why is that? So here's what the line is, and here's where the positions are, and this is where these numbers are going on this formula, and this is what comes out, and this is why it's this way. And we literally built algebra together, and immediately I got it, and I was able to breeze through algebra 1, further for algebra 2. I did college algebra I didn't use a calculator. I did all the way through intro calc. And then I had to start using calculators for that shit. And it was just, I was going into higher level math than I even needed because it finally made sense because it was a language and not a formula. So I think if you think you're bad at math, you have not given yourself the opportunity to get fucking good at math. You haven't found a good enough teacher. And let me tell you, it takes, on average, if I remember correctly, about 5 years of immersion. If you're talking about like a non-Latin language, something that doesn't use our alphabet, something like Chinese or Arabic or something, 5 years of immersion before you start to become fluent. Have you ever given that fucking time to math? No, you fucking haven't, Tony. So don't write yourself off right now. Go get a better fucking teacher and become an astrophysicist and figure out how the goddamn universe started and call me the fuck back and tell me what the fuck's going on out there because I want to know. It's your job. You be the next big scientist.
Well, I will raise a glass to that teacher, whoever it was that taught you how to do that. They're
Fisher,
in education for the right reasons. What's that?
Yeah. Her name was Dr. Ann Fisher, and she's fucking awesome. And let me tell you, I met her at Tulsa Community College, which is where I got my first 3 undergrad degrees. And her, then Dr. Brian Taylor was my biology professor, and Dr. Antonio Alonso was my Spanish professor. And those 3 people all taught at Tulsa Community College. They all changed my fucking life. And now to this day, my dream job, if I ever get a chance to do anything that isn't content creation, in fact, I might do it on the side, my dream job is to teach at a community college and give kids like me that I was thinking that are too stupid to do what they want to do with their life, give them the opportunity to challenge themselves and to grow the way that I did and achieve my dreams the way that I have. That's what I want to do with my life now. And I think, Tony, you need to go find a teacher like that too.
Maybe I will. I don't know. I don't want to say how old I am. I've been in and out of college quite a bit, but
I dropped out 3 times.
Degree.
I dropped out of college studies. 3 times.
Yeah. I've got 3 under my belt, so yeah, I could pick it up a 4th, I guess. But I don't want to take too much more time. One question, and you may be the wrong guy to ask about this, but it popped into my head while you were talking, and if you can answer it in like 3 or 4 words, just to tell me what to Google. Is there a way?
What?
Have we figured out, scientifically speaking, what it is about adding electrons, protons, and neutrons to an atom that changes the properties of the material? Like, have we figured that out?
I think I know what you're asking, but I don't know if I'm going to answer it properly.
What is it about having X number of protons, neutrons, electrons that makes gold do what it does, but it makes carbon do what it does? You know what I mean? Because really, we're just talking about subatomic particles, you know?
So I'm not a chemist, but I'm going to answer this as best I can. And then I need you to go find a chemist, figure out why I'm wrong. Okay.
Well, I was going to say, if you can tell me what to Google, I can do the rest. But
yeah. So starting with what you already know, the number of protons is what determines the species of atom.
Right.
And what that's going to do is the number of protons is also going to get you to a point where you can then a stable atom has the exact same number of electrons as it has protons. Hold on a second. Didn't throw up. So the I thought I was gonna, but the number of protons is going to determine number of electrons possible. If it has too many or too few, it's going to be an ion. Now we're not talking about isotopes. So we're not talking about neutrons. Fuck that shit. Neutrons are just there for stability, right? So don't worry about them right now. They do other stuff. We'll talk about it later. But for right now, ignore the neutrons. Okay. And so what you what you're actually talking about, the properties of these things, like how they behave. The major thing that I would be able to talk about at my level of training and like what chemistry is useful for me is just valence electrons, which are the outermost shell. And those are going to appear in periods. That's why it's the periodic table. And also their reactivity, the way or the electronegativity, how they're willing to bond to other things, and what kind of bonds they're going to form, whether it's going to be an ionic bond, a covalent bond, or a metallic bond. Those all are to do with the electronegativity and the number of valence electrons. I'm missing something here, because electronegativity is broken down into atomic radius and effective nuclear charge, which is why if you have a smaller atomic radius, you have less shielding and valence electrons closer to the nucleus, which increases the effective nuclear charge, which is going to increase electronegativity, which is why fluorine's so goddamn electronegative, whereas a transition metal is going to form a metallic bond, where instead of having such a hard bond, you're instead going to have a sea of electrons over the top, because there isn't really uniform sharing like you would have with a covalent bond or an ionic bond. And that's why you can have cold fusion of metals. If you were to remove an oxidized layer, then you're going to have metals that can just form, it can basically weld together and melt together because you have that kind of metallic bonding. So it's just, if you want to start Googling and get to the level where I'm at with my knowledge, which again, I'm not a chemist, but if you want to get to where I'm at with it and start thinking about the way that I'm thinking about the way I was trained to think about it as a biologist, I would start there, start looking up electronegativity. The functions of electronegativity are going to be effective nuclear charge and atomic radius. Start there, and then also start looking at different bond types and where they appear in periods based on valence electrons across the periodic table. That's where I would start thinking about it. But again, that is outside of my pay grade a little bit.
Dude,
Yes.
Considering I threw that at you out of left field, I would put everything you just delivered on par with Patton Oswalt's rant on Parks and Recreations, where he came up with like his theory of what like the new Star Wars movie was going to be. Now, I don't know if you've watched that. It was a great clip. He goes on for like 9 minutes and just runs out. He's like, I literally have no moisture left in my mouth. I need to stop. But no, that was for someone who's not a chemist, that was very impressive. So thank you, and John, thank you for your time, and to the folks in chat. I have been glancing at things. Thank you for your comments as well. I'll let you know if I find the meaning of life. You'll be my first call. Okay.
Most definitely. Thank you very much, Tony. I cannot wait for all the chemists to tell me all the things I missed. I'll see you later. I'm not joking about that. I can't wait for the chemist to be like, yo, here's some other stuff that you could have answered this question with. I want to know. Just don't tell me why I'm wrong, because I'm always correct, don't you know?
I mean, I would have had to Google it. I couldn't have done that like off the top.
Oh man, it's been a long time since I had to think about that shit. Let me tell you.
Well, heathens, that's going to be it for today's clip from The Line. Again, if you would like to subscribe to The Line, their links are in the description, so please go down there and subscribe. And as a reminder, I do host over there at least twice a month on either a Sunday or a Monday. So if you want to see more of me answering questions from callers, please go over to The Line and subscribe. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.